My biggest regrets. I kind of feel like I'm a failure. Like if you replayed my life 100 times, then I'm only about at the 50th percentile. When I was 21 years old, I was making $400,000 a year. I was making a little over $200,000 in investment banking and around $250,000 a year in nightlife. And then when you factor in the crazy taxes in New York City that my investment banking bonuses and salary were taxed at, then on a net basis, I was making around $400,000, potentially slightly less. But then you would think that by my mid 30s, I would be making a few $1,000,000 every single year. And that is completely wrong and it's not true. And the reason for that is I had a lot of false starts where I accepted jobs and worked at them for not the best reasons, primarily for money. I did investment banking for about 5 years and I hated it. And I knew that I didn't want to become a managing director. I actually ended up as a director before I got sick and had to take time off. So investment banking I did for about 5 years. And then nightlife I also did for about 4 to 5 years. In 2009, I started getting very sick. It was probably a combination of just burning the candle on both ends. I wasn't sleeping well. I was under a tremendous amount of stress in my investment banking job. I was staying out late and partying. And even though I wasn't drinking or doing any drugs, it just has a very deleterious and harmful effect where you combine the enormous stress that goes into your investment banking jobs, and then you combine it with the inherently unhealthy environment of nightlife. And then, because I wanted to continue making as much money as possible, I went to psychiatrists and took a lot of medication. And then my body started rejecting that medication, where eventually I got to a point where I couldn't work at all. So I took 2 years off, 2009, 2010. So then I had to restart again from zero. And then I eventually ended up moving to Miami where I had to restart again. So basically, if I had to give you some advice, and if you're a young person, I would definitely recommend that your first job out of college or out of high school should be something that you're passionate about, that you actually genuinely enjoy. Because if you don't and you're just going through the motions, even if it's paying you a lot of money, then you're going to likely have to just simply restart in 3 to 4 years. One of my best friends right now works for the federal government and he hates his job. He has to conduct security clearances and do a lot of interviews. And his workload is very, very high. He's always telling me that he's driving a lot, doing interviews, typing up case files, and he wants to quit. And in fact, he put in a transfer request, but they're not honoring it. So even though he's worked there over the past 6 or 7 years, he's thinking about leaving just because there's too much stress and he wants to start over and do something else. So I definitely recommend that if you're a young person, do something that you're passionate about and then find a way to monetize it. So let your passion be your guidepost and let that determine what you're going to focus on, and put your time and effort and work into your passion and then find a way to monetize that, as opposed to accepting just a job that's going to pay you a lot of money, because in all likelihood you're probably just going to end up quitting a few years down the line. I think the best decision I made was marrying my wife, because I'm definitely not easy to live with. I have pretty bad OCD tendencies. Like right now, everything is fine because my house is set up in a way where I have like water filters, I have HEPA air filters and things of that nature. So if you came into my house, then nothing would really seem out of place, although I probably have a little bit too many vitamins. But besides that, you would think that it's just a normal house. But then if you put me in like an old building that has like lead paint, or if you put me in an environment that has mold, or you brought me out to a restaurant and asked me to drink the water and it wasn't filtered, it would start setting off my OCD and I would start getting very anxious. But my wife is like super calm. She's very chill. She doesn't have OCD and she tolerates me. And I think that the best decision I made was marrying my wife. And even though I don't have the best relationship with my father, I think the best thing that I learned from him was that it's incredibly vital to have a strong relationship with your spouse. Because my parents have been married for over 50 years and I've rarely ever heard them argue or fight or anything like that. And that definitely had a positive impact on me. A few other things that I regret. I definitely regret staying in New York City for as long as I did. I probably should have left New York City way earlier. I spent 13 years there. I also regret going to college and university, even though I got a scholarship to Cornell, where in total I was only paying about $5,000 a semester to go there. I still think that I wasted a lot of time. And even though I graduated in 3.5 years, I think that had I moved to a large city and worked in real estate and nightlife, probably would have saved up an incremental $400,000 to $500,000 by skipping college and focusing on a career. And the crazy thing is that I worked so hard in college. I wanted to get really good grades. I was very competitive. And the amount of time and effort that I put into papers or studying for exams, only to then forget the material immediately after the test. If I had actually applied myself and put in that time and effort into building a business, or if I had put that time and effort into being a real estate agent or working in nightlife, I definitely would have built a more solid foundation than I currently have. And that's basically it. I definitely think that there are situations where if you replayed my life 100 times, then probably 10% of the time I would be homeless. And I also think that I was extremely lucky that I was born during the time that I was. Because if I was born like 20 years earlier or even 10 years earlier, where the internet wasn't nearly as popular, then I think that that would have been problematic, because I always had a lot of problems holding and maintaining a full-time job, because I wouldn't dress very well, or sometimes I had problems shaving every single day when I was working in investment banking, and they looked the other way because I was such a strong performer. But overall, it's very hard for me to maintain a job, because even with YouTube, like I batch record my videos, and right now it's like 12 a.m. in the morning, and I'll bang out like 5 videos now. But I only do that after I get a good night's sleep and after I quote unquote feel like it. But then there are some times when I don't record videos for like 3 weeks in a row. So yeah, I am very grateful that the internet exists. And I think that right now, as I mentioned before, and I think that overall I'm about average. That's about it. And I'm fine with that. I have a very good relationship with my wife and I'm content. I think that one of the important things in life is that you should strive to reduce pain and not necessarily seek joy. And that's what I do. I try to reduce pain points and I try to reduce stress. And I don't necessarily seek the next shiny object or seek joy. And by doing that, it kind of leads to a steady and mellow existence where there aren't many highs or lows. So yeah, that's about it. If you have any questions, leave a comment below, and I appreciate your attention.